What's up, everybody? Schuyler Callihan here with Christopher Hall. It is another episode of Between the Eers here on West Virginia on SI. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up as well. A follow on X at SI_WVU. But that's pretty much it as far as the housekeeping stuff goes. Today, we're going to talk about kind of where West Virginia is at this moment. It's the final week heading into game week. So we're going to talk about what Neal Brown said. We're going to react off of that. So let's waste no more time. Let's go ahead and kick it over to Neal Brown for his thoughts on the second scrimmage, the final one, before they make some decisions, some key decisions heading into that first game against Penn State.
We went over a little over 100 plays. We hit all four core special teams, had a Big 12 officiating crew, a lot of really good video situations. We worked goal line, we worked a backed up situation, did an opening drive of each half. Got some good red zone stuff in, did a third and fourth down period. So a lot of good work. Wasn't real fired up about some of it. I thought some individuals really showed up, and I thought there were some disappointing things in it as well. And really the last three practices, we'd kind of been trending upward and just not at our best today. And I can make excuses for them, but I'm not. You know, it is practice 14. We have been pretty physical. It was a little warm. Like I said, I can make a bunch of them, but we have to be better than we were today. It wasn't awful, but you know the expectations are high, and it's a daily standard, and we fell short. Not everybody, but we fell short in a few areas today. I'll talk about each phase quickly, and then y'all can ask questions. Defensively, we started off very good. I thought we fell off as the scrimmage went. Some guys got tired. We played some of those guys a bunch of snaps because we wanted to. You know, I think it's really, really important for us, especially at the safety position, to find out like who are the guys who are going to kind of step up there. We need to play cleaner. You know, we missed some tackles in space, and it's a combination. We got some good offensive skill guys, but also we're not using great technique. I thought our D-line was effective today. I thought we did a good job using our hands, created some TFLs. Offensively, got off to a slow start, picked it up later, some explosive plays. Again, not clean enough. You know, I thought that run game got going during the second part, but just not clean enough for a veteran group. We got a bunch of guys played a bunch of football. We held Garrett after 2 series. He played 2 series, and Nico came in, got a lot of quality reps with the ones, which we wanted to do. So that was good. And I'll hit on Preston Fox offensively. I thought he had a really nice day. He made a couple really big plays, and he's probably been as consistent as anybody we have offensively, just day in and day out, showing up, doing the work, being productive. So,
All right, Chris. So obviously not a great second scrimmage. Obviously, you're not going to have the everything go your way. Anytime you do these kind of inter squad scrimmages, you're going to have some good, some bad, some ugly. But it felt like Neal was kind of a little ticked off about some certain things. He really didn't go into detail as to much, what he's most concerned about. He did talk about some of the things, but just kind of your overall read after these two press conferences that he's had from the scrimmages, most importantly, this most recent one.
Still a team and a program trying to find its way. You can obviously tell there's still a lot of youth on the team. I know we've kind of touched on that a lot throughout fall camp, but I think really the most concerning thing to me was in the 2 scrimmages, the offense had slow starts. And he mentioned it both times. It shouldn't happen with a veteran group. And then you can go back to, well, is it the defense coming out strong, throwing some things at them that they haven't seen yet, which is a good thing.
Yo.
But I think the bad thing is the offense hasn't responded. So I think that's the biggest concern, especially in week 3 you're on the road at Pitt. You'd like to get off to a fast start. As bad as I think Pitt is, their defense is always formidable under Narduzzi. There's no denying that, and you don't want that team to hang around. So when we talked about Arizona, I mean that's going to come up. That's going to be here before you know it. So getting those fast starts on the road is going to be critical, because especially early in the year, you don't know exactly what you're getting from the defense yet. Now, if the defense comes out and starts strong, that's great. But the problem there has been they haven't finished strong. Is that part of the offense just getting better as the game goes along? That would be a positive sign. So early last week, he said you wanted to kind of ebb and flow. Didn't really touch on that. I think they've really kind of held things close to the vest more or less this fall camp, kind of keeping everything close knit. But yeah, if this was 5 years ago, he'd probably be excited with what he has right now. But they've gotten better, they've improved, so it could be more just a challenge to this team to get better, to finish out the final few days strong, to really lock in some of those spots they've had concerned about. And as of right now, it's kind of a wait and see what happens. But I think overall, really, you have to be you're if you're a Mountaineer fan, you have to be excited because you're not talking about you know who's so much backups anymore. You're really talking about third spots. So I think with that, you have to be excited. Um, Neal's probably being more critical over the years, considering Gary Green's coming back. But I'm not too concerned about it. But obviously, when you're opening against Penn State, who, when you look at them both on paper, both, you always see the arguments. Well, we have this, and we have this. Well, we brought in this guy. On paper, Penn State has the edge on that. But it all has to come together in week one. And when you're going against a team that, again, on paper, when you have talking about the recruits that they've retained and everything, or are 4 stars or better 3 stars, or however you want to look at it as far as recruiting rankings, you want to be buttoned up week one, which is really hard to do in college football unless you bring in back, a bunch of juniors and seniors.
Yeah, I don't know how I want to take these press conferences from Neil because I think I've told you off air before. Like it feels like he's being more critical or a little bit more harsh, and maybe that is just having a slightly older team. Like you said, it's still young to its core, but you have more veteran pieces. You have a proven commodity at quarterback. You have a proven established running back room, an established offensive line. Even though you're missing a couple pieces there, you have some veterans on the defense, even though they're coming in from all sorts of different places. And I'm wondering if, like a year ago, it was a whole different situation too. I mean, he was coaching for his job. He had to get a quarterback ready. He didn't know who the quarterback was until probably about this time last year. He didn't even announce the starting quarterback. They just rolled out there and everyone assumed it was going to be Garrett Green, and it was. But I felt like last year, last training camp or last fall camp, whatever you want to call it, it was more about building the confidence up more so than, critiquing a guy openly or talking about him in a press conference and saying, yeah, well, we need to do this a little bit better and just being harsh and nitpicking. This year, I feel like he's probably able to do that a little bit more because those guys have that confidence built up. They've done it in the game, they've done it in practice. Now they're all coming back. They've got playing time together. I don't feel like some of these guys are going to take it as hard as maybe they would have a year ago. And plus, two, the expectations are higher. Like last year, getting to a bowl game alone would have been great. Anything more was the cherry on top, and they got that cherry on top. Now it's about the whole thing. Like, can they push for a Big 12 championship? That's what his vision is for this team. And right now, he's probably thinking, there's still a little ways to go before this team can actually be a team that's taken seriously as a Big 12 contender. And he knows the potential is probably there. It just hasn't been there consistently on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and that's really, I mean, you heard him talking about consistency since he's been here, and it's still a concern. We've talked about none of these guys are proven yet. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's they're making plays in practice, but I think he's going to be critical of them until they see it in the game. When you kind of look at some of the Neal Brown interviews, whether it's on uh, radio or other podcasts, that
He's
been
backing
more of
his guys up.
he's been more of a promoter. Back home, he's been more critical, probably because we get a little bit of a glimpse of what's going on as well. So, yeah, it's really been kind of a mixed bag when you kind of take everything as a whole on what he's talked about this offseason. But if you kind of look what he said about Garrett Green, he's improved. Taking a big step in his passing. Everything out of mini camp, he's taking a big step in his passing. So if
Heard it
that's
from Tyler
correct,
Allen last
and
week.
his receivers are going to make him plays, then yeah, we shouldn't have much worry about the offense. And it's like, well, this hopefully everything that we've heard about the defense so far um, is good. So yeah, I think it's one of those seasons like we know what was going in, but we're still a little not real sure because it's been a little bit tight-lipped maybe. As far as the promoting, it's just basic promoting. But everything from what I've seen, from what I've heard, it's just everything is in the right direction. I think they're not putting that much value on Penn State. I know a lot of people are. Like, win or lose this game is not the end of the season by any means. Like, you don't have to win this game to get
Yeah.
in the playoff, right? Like, you're an automatic qualifier. You don't even like to win this game to maybe get an automatic bid, yes, because you don't know exactly how the Big 12 is going to shake out. Like last year, some of these teams were supposed to be good, didn't end up being that good, right? Like West Virginia's schedule supposed to be daunting. Well, the end of the year it was like, whoa, wasn't that tough? Like, well, if you take away the West Virginia win, that program has an extra win.
Exactly.
Is that a little better? Like, just because West Virginia was one of the teams, so it is what it is at that point. But in an open race, they say it's as open as it is. It Big 12 going to kind of hurt themselves, eat them when it comes to that? So yeah, there's a lot riding on a Penn State game as far as conference, overall conference. I think it's unfair to put West Virginia in that kind of position, especially when it's only this is the second year been able to retain players. Bunch of sophomores on the outside. You bring in Jaden Braves, is obviously uber talented, but it's still all got to come together. And you're asking them to all come together in week one. And Penn State, they have to do the same thing. They could just be catching Penn State at the right time as well. So
Yeah.
it's I don't know if we definitely won't get all the answers in week one, but I think overall you have to really feel good about this team because what you've seen from this group, how they've been able to evolve overall as a program going into fall camp, even when going back to spring, how fast they were working through practice. You have to feel a lot more confident about going in the way they've been added to the playbook, really on both sides. Mentioned it before, and then they kind of validated it. Like defensively, you're not talking about base so much. You're talking about personnel. Like, hey, we're going to throw dime out there. We're going to throw nickel. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Like, that's huge because week in, week out. I mean, in every conference, pretty much at this point, like, wasn't that? I mean, I guess it's been long enough now when Dana was here, but everybody in the conference was air raid, right? Like,
Yeah.
you just had to focus on air raid. Well, now you're going to go up against a power team, an air raid, a
You got to
spread, like
mix it up every week.
every week. So seeing them adjust, we kind of credited Iowa State kind of doing some things within the conference. Now everyone's kind of playing like a mixed bag on defense, and it comes down to having like specialty guys on defense. And West Virginia's adjusted. Again, it just goes back how much can those safeties, how much of a role do the safeties play in the defense? And if I'm right about the defensive line, hopefully that kind of hides some of the deficiencies in the secondary until they can come together.
That's where I was going to go next because, like, I don't get the sense that Neal is like head over heels about the defense, but I don't get the sense that it's like he's overly concerned either. It's kind of somewhere in between, and it's more so TBD than anything. But just speaking for me personally, like I look at this defense, especially the back end, and I'm concerned. Like Garnett Hollis, Aiden Garnes, they should, in theory, be formidable starters, guys that can really kind of hold their own against some of the league's best, but there's a lot of unknown there. I mean, probably more so with Garnes than anything because he's moving up a level. Hollis, I mean, he did it before in the Big Ten. You would assume that that would translate, but again, you don't know in this scheme. Is there anything different? I know a lot of college teams these days kind of all play the same things. They're not reinventing football by any means on either side, but there's some different things that you're going to be taught to do, and maybe that's going to be throwing a wrinkle into something with his game. And same thing in the back end with the safeties. You bring back Aubrey Burks, but you're moving into a new position. How does he fit there? How does Anthony Wilson fit in at the cat? How does KK Tarnu fit in? How does Zay Jennings if he plays, and so on and so forth? There's so many new pieces to that secondary. It's kind of concerning because there's so many unknowns. It doesn't mean it's a glaring issue. It's just you don't know what you're going to get when you come to week one and you're facing Drew Aller and all those unproven guys that Penn State has. So I don't know if I'm be more concerned about that or about the offense not having that same identity that they did a year ago. Everyone knows now that West Virginia is going to come in and try and run the ball down everyone's throat. When you don't have Zach Frazier, you don't have Doug Nestor, it can't be talked about enough. Yes, they bring a lot of experienced pieces back, but that's a massive hole or two holes really that you're trying to fill and trying to still have that same identity that you did a year ago. So I don't know if it's that or the defense is more concerning, but I think there's definitely worry on both sides.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the corners as much because West Virginia has a track record already. Charles Woods brought him in, good
Beanie.
player. And then Beanie most recently. So I'm not concerned about the corners. Seeing enough of Hollis. You can't ask guys to cover receivers 5, 6, 7 seconds. Like that's just no one's going to do
Got
it.
to get after the passer. I mean, that's
In this
that's the
today's
thing in this
game,
league.
the way it's called, you just can't do it. It's impossible. So I think so much of it's going to be on the pass rush, and you look at that group up there. Um, I think they're going to be. I think this is the group that's really going to be is undervalued going into the season. There's a lot of talent up there, a lot of athleticism. Tyron Bradley, Ty French, yes, he's unproven, but extremely athletic. I think PJ Jackson coming from Troy was a big addition. Sean Martin's ready to prove his value. He was quietly banged up last year. Really waiting for him to emerge. Huge, big kid, extremely athletic. So I'm excited about this defense. I think they're going to cause havoc early, and to me, I think I'm just beating a dead horse. It's all about the safeties.
Yeah.
Like knowing where to be in the safeties. I think the move with Aubrey Burks, I think really is going to confuse teams, especially with the defense when you talk about spur, spear, cat safety. Like there's a lot going on, and he's going to play them all.
Yeah.
So I think they can confuse a lot of people. Whether that's you know right off the rip when we're talking about Penn State, that's a new offense coordinator. Now he's familiar. He comes from Kansas. He's familiar with West Virginia. But that can kind of, if you're scheming up new things, that can kind of be a negative to him. You can kind of get swarmed up a little bit because you're going everything based on last year. Not that saying that he's not good at his job, but with Drew Allar going to face a ton of pressure after last season. Didn't perform probably as much as Happy Valley would like. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on him week one. You go and hit him early in the first possession, hold them off the scoreboard on their first possession, that pressure starts to mount, right? He doesn't complete a pass, go down the list. And then, of course, you get an opposite where they go right down the field and gets all the confidence in the world, and then West Virginia's on the other end, right? But I think if you can punch them in the mouth early with the guys up front, it alleviates the pressure on the back end naturally. So I think if you can alleviate that pressure early in the first few weeks, don't expect Pitt to really have put that pressure on them from a passing game standpoint. I think there you got to kind of worry about the running game, right? How can that front seven stack up against the running game? And you can say that with Penn State too, because they're more likely going to have to lean on the running game heading right in. They lost a bunch of offensive line, but same thing as West Virginia. Like, hey, we got Brandon Yates, we got Nick Malone. They're like, hey, we got guys too. And
Yeah.
they're projected to be top 3 draft picks in their respective draft classes. So, or top 3 round draft picks in their draft classes.
Yeah.
To me, I think really when you kind of look at it, the first game can kind of tell you where you are as a program against Penn State because Penn State's established. And when we're talking about, all right, West Virginia's doing this on the offensive line, so is Penn State. Penn State's doing this with the receiver. West Virginia's doing this with the receiving core, so is Penn State. Penn State's got to replace cornerbacks. West Virginia does too. Like there's a lot of similarities there. Drew Allar couldn't pass deep. Um, Garrett Green could, right? And then flip it the other way. Garrett Green struggled with the layups, drew out, and Laura didn't. So there's some similarities, a lot of questions going in. And I think really it just goes back to not Neal Brown nitpicking, but just expecting more from this group, regardless if they're redshirt sophomores or not. Like
And it could
that's
just be a
3 years
little
in the
extra
program.
nudge too. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
just a little
a
bit
week
of
and a half away.
like he got off. I think it was Marty and McGee, right? Like
Yeah.
got off that and then immediately comes in the press conference and was like,
Ugh.
I don't like anything, right? Like so you gotta mix the two worlds. So it's like, well, nationally I need to get these guys promoted, but locally, hey, this is what's going on. Not happy here, not happy here, not happy here.
Well,
Um
and I think
and the question I think really becomes what he said in the beginning of the week, like you want ebbs and flow, but and there's certain like if the route's crisp, and they make the catch with the guys right there, was it a good defense? Like, well, Shadon Brown's like, well, no, he didn't do this, right? So they can nitpick everything. Like they can really break it down. Like, well, he reacted too quick, reacted too late. Um, he didn't have his break quick enough. Whatever you want to, however they want to nitpick it. Like, yeah. So I think it's a good thing. I've always thought Neal Brown's been honest in his press conferences, so I think that's really what it is. Him coming in fresh off the practice field. This is what I saw today. I really got to get in the film room. I can give you a better update later, and really won't get that till Monday. So
And by then, it's all
it
Penn
just kind of
State.
is
So,
what it is. Like I'd rather coach be like striving for perfection and kind of
yeah.
like he's not setting it like the boat's leaking, we're patching holes, right? Like that's not happening. So it's more of fine tuning and everything else. There's always going to be bad plays. They're human. At the end of the day, they're just human. They're going to make mistakes. It's about cleaning up those mistakes and seeing less of it and seeing that consistency on every play.
And I think, like I was saying too, like it could be a little extra nudge. I mean, we're getting to classes start this week. You're getting into that weird period where you've been so used to a routine every single day for almost a month or so. Getting into fall camp, go to practice, you eat, you lift, and do all these other things, film study, meetings, all that good stuff. And then everything kind of stops for a second because now you got to integrate classes into it, study halls and all this other stuff. It's a weird translation or transition, and to try and find that perfect balance. Some guys at this point, especially because of all that stuff now that they're adding on top of the physical toll and mental toll that they've had to go through the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's a lot for some of these kids. Information overload, and you can start to get a little bit lackadaisical in some areas. And we've heard this probably a time or two from Neil before, that this is kind of a tough week for them because they have a lot going on mentally with school and practice and all that stuff to get together. And you're getting ready to play Penn State next week. Like that's a lot going on. You got to make sure you stay locked in these next 9 to 10 days, or else it's going to come back and haunt you on August 31st. So I think that's a big part of it. The other part too, I think it's okay if the offense is struggling here and there at practice, at least right now. Typically at college, at the college level, the NFL level, you'll hear time and time again, the defense is ahead of the offense. If that's the case, that's usually a sign that you're going to be okay. If you come in and the offense is just shredding up your defense left and right at the very beginning of camp and preseason, you're going to have a long year because the defense should always theoretically be ahead of where the offense is when you come back into practice. So I think that there's a little bit of a mixed bag. I think it's fine. It doesn't sound like there's one side of the ball that's just completely dominating. It seems like each of them have their own days. That's what you want. Now, come August 31st, you want your defense and offense to have their best days possible because they're going to need it.
Yeah, I think even Neil downplayed the class thing this year. It's a year-round deal now, and now they got guys coming in January. They've already but done that through spring.
Yeah, and some of these guys, they don't take
They
classes in the fall.
and they do it all summer too. So they
Yeah,
specifically like the practice times they have will stay the same throughout the
yeah.
season. They know the classes, how the class schedules are going to be. So going into the fall for these kids, they obviously around the country, they fix these classes for the kids so it goes around football. So I think the biggest thing with it is just especially when you're coming into the season after a 9-win season, all the hype, students coming in, all the
There's a
watching
different
us.
buzz.
There's a different buzz. So you got to keep these kids grounded because first weekend, all the students are grounded. They're all going to be excited, telling them how great they are, and they haven't even played a game yet. And so handling success hasn't been a West Virginia thing, right? Like it's rare that they've been able to have success correctly. So first weekend is kind of like a test. Like, hey man, Garrett Green's on all these watch. Look, there's Garrett Green. So um, I think
Go
every
ahead and prove it.
coach opening move in weekend when the students all come in and that first weekend they're all together, every coach is sweating a little bit, like don't go to do anything stupid, stay home. We got a game next week. Every coach everywhere is probably sweating out a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think this group's focused. I haven't like I feel better going into the season now, especially against Penn State, than I did at the beginning of fall camp. And I predicted 9 wins, and I think I don't think that should be the expectation because we don't know exactly how good the rest of the Big 12
Yeah.
is and how these players respond. Obviously, injuries play a big role into it, but I think they're finally in a position where it's like, hey, they're still young, but they've got some guys. And
Yeah.
it's the first time where it's not, hey, we have one or two receivers. We're hoping someone catches on. I think you have a room full of guys that any guys can go off at any given time. And if one guy's showing consistency, you're going to see it week in, week out.
Yeah, and I mean the thing in years past is like sometimes you just didn't have enough bodies at receiver. You didn't have enough bodies at corner. That's not the issue anymore. You have plenty of options. It's just a matter of who's actually going to step up and be the guy. I mean, how many shows have we done this fall camp already? I don't know that we've talked about Justin Robinson once. Maybe once or
A little
twice.
bit,
I
just a
mean,
little.
yeah, I mean that's a big time transfer that when he came out of high school, he's a 4 or 5 star recruit. He's played in the SEC. Like he's 6'4", 200 plus pounds. Like there's something there. Maybe he breaks out here at West Virginia, and he's somebody that no one's talking about because of the young core that comes back and Jaden Bray having a great offseason. So there's other guys like that on the roster at other positions, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds. But I think I'm right there with you. Like it's not where we're heading into this Penn State game and you're like, ooh, like you were a year ago at certain spots, and you just
Oh, last
knew,
year it was like 1% chance.
yeah.
Now I'm like, what team may have a shot of beating Penn State without the
Yeah,
red?
I mean,
The
I give
Canadian
the
comes back.
ESPN, FBI all the crap in the world every week when we do those articles. We talk about it because it seems like they're always so heavily favored in one way or the other, whether it's the home team or whatever they just did the previous game. But I'm a little surprised they gave West Virginia, I think it was like 22%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but considering their history with how they view West Virginia, even with it being at home, I thought that was a little bit more than what they
Yeah,
probably would have in
because
years
again,
past.
everything's on paper right now, and that goes a lot based on recruiting rankings.
Yeah.
And that bodes well for West Virginia. I think. I mean, it sound yeah, like you said, it may sound low, but it actually bodes really well for West
Yeah,
Virginia. Like that's not bad.
absolutely. I was shocked to see. I thought it was
We're
started
talking
with a
about
1.
Hudson Clement, who may be the go-to guy, was a walk,
Yeah.
and they're putting West Virginia at 22%. Like if you said a walk-on might be the go-to guy 4 years ago, we'd be like, oh god,
Yeah.
we're in
Against
trouble.
Penn
But we've
State too.
seen it. We've seen Hudson. I mean, he's gotten bigger. You know what I mean? Like he's
Yeah.
a bigger kid now. So it's. I think. I mean, it's probably last year was excited because you can see the turn in the program coming. This year I'm excited because now the fruits of their labor. We're going to be able to see it this year,
The
and I think
target's not necessarily on their back yet. But
but then when
you're
West
at that
Virginia
point
may win,
where you're expected to win some of these games, and if you fall, like you need to keep getting closer and closer and closer to the top of the Big 12 because there's no going back at this point. Like it's, last few years we've been saying it's year 3, it's year 4, it's year 5. They hadn't done anything. Well, they finally did something. Now you got to take that next step. You can't go back and win 6 games.
right? I mean that would mean to me either West Virginia had a ton of injuries, or
Yeah,
the Big 12 was way better than everybody thought. Both could be true. So
absolutely.
yeah, I've you just got to go back to last year. You're bringing back a core group that didn't play well at Houston. And Neal Brown talked about this recently. Like, didn't play well at Houston, and they lost. And Neal Brown said, "We didn't deserve to win. That's just the way it is. You shouldn't have been in that situation. You play
They were
better.
down 2
That
scores
doesn't.
in that game at one
Yeah, you
point.
play better. That doesn't happen. So, and that group comes back. So, did they learn their lesson? I mean, you got a quarterback that is fired up. Like, he's a leader. I had him as my X factor on the
Just
all
keep
or
the
the
helmet on this time,
yeah,
Jason.
just keep him
Yeah.
and CJ both keep the helmet on.
Yeah,
But
CJ
yeah,
too.
there was a lot of valuable lessons last year. It should carry over this year. You see the focus on this team. You don't see a lot of them, you know, patting themselves on the back or pounding their chest right now. It's been a focus group and a focus group that's solely uh, all their attention's on the Big 12 championship. Said it
That's what I wanted to mention.
earlier in fall camp. Like we've heard them say, "Well, Big 12 championship." It sounded more of a hope than a goal. And this is a more goal driven, more focused group that it feels like yeah, they're locked in. Like this is real. This is legitimate. They're speaking it. They're trying to speak it into existence because they believe they have the talent to do it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. Is every time I've heard a player talk, even going back to spring, I've just heard nothing but Big 12 championship. That's our goal. Anything less than that is a disappointment, essentially. And the way they're going about it too, it's not like they're sitting here saying like this has got to happen or whatever, or we know we're good, we know we're the best team in the Big 12. they're handling it the right way. They're not talking about it too much to where it's like, okay, don't get distracted about that and miss out on the game that's right in front of you. But I feel like this is a more mature group than obviously the teams they've had in years past. I mean, again, it's still a young team, but these are sophomores. When we're talking about Jaheim White and those young receivers and some of these, guys on the defensive side of the ball that are young but have played, like a Trey Lathan, a Ben Cutter, Josiah Trotter, even though he hasn't played, even though they're young, they're guys that have played a lot of football already. So I think they're a little bit mature beyond their years, which is only going to help them the deeper they get into their career. And that's why we talked about it the other day on here on the show is like, this is kind of the launching pad for them to really kind of assert themselves as a top 3 team in the Big 12. The future is extremely bright. This is just the start of it.
Yeah, still on the ground floor right now, which I know that TCU a couple years ago they made it, and Sonny Dykes is a legend,
Lightning
right?
in a bottle, though.
Everybody thought, oh, he had it figured out. What happened to him last year? Like it,
Fell
it's
apart.
about building. You're not going to you may get a flash in the pan, but what do you do after is what matters. Because
Yeah.
one
No
year,
one's no one's gonna care about the 9-4 Duke's Mayo Bowl season if you don't do anything to come back and
right, you got to
capitalize on
continue to show that you're building. And talked about Nico earlier in fall camp. Like really impressed with his maturity, how tall he stands in the pocket, how far he's come. And then like you look into the future and like, well, this kid's just going to pick up the reins next year,
it.
and they're just going to keep moving forward
And then you
because
got Ryder Burton and Khalil Wilkins waiting behind
right,
him.
like
So
you've got guys in there that are been within the program, understanding what it takes. Nico had all the talent in the world, but he was not ready as a freshman. He wasn't ready as a redshirt. He didn't understand what it
yeah,
took to be a quarterback. Heard Garrett Green talk about like, yeah, you've heard Tyler Allen talk about like his transformation this season has been he understands this is a business
night and
now.
day.
He understands this is 24/7. Like that's what it takes. There's very few quarterbacks that can come in as a freshman, be good and sustain it and continue their path. Like we've seen freshmen, we've seen it with Ohio State quarterbacks, we've seen it at Oklahoma State with quarterbacks. They never really progressed because a lot of it was they just didn't have film on them. But once they got film on them and saw their weaknesses, they knew how to take their strengths away. So you just got to me, it just goes back to being excited about this program right now, how far they've come really in 2 years. Like they've come a long way in 2 years. And you just starting to see the talent kind of stack up and your talent that guys may not see a lot of playing time, but man, they're going to be playmakers in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really the last thing I have to say about it is, I don't think West Virginia has a development problem. I mean, you talk about Hudson Clement, you could throw Preston Fox in that mix. You could throw Edward Vester in there who comes over from overseas and
Has no clue
probably
how to
didn't
play
have the
football.
basis of football
Yeah,
all nailed down to a T. And he comes here and he's turned himself into a really good quality Big 12 player. Jaheim White, everything that Chad Scott has done with that running back room, he's getting guys ready to play as freshmen. I mean, you saw what Bilal Marshall did last year with the young receivers that he had in that room. You're seeing the overall progression. It's a steady, slow progression for the quarterbacks, but we saw it from Garrett. We're starting to see that with Nico. You assume that's probably going to be the same thing with Ryder Burton and Khalil Wilkins. It just feels like this coaching staff really knows how to develop players. They know how to get them in, get a plan for them, and execute it. It's just about being able to hold on to those guys. We've talked about it a million times on this show. If they can just get to a spot where they can hold on to their key talent that's young and build with that, then they're going to be able to do something here, do something special maybe. And we're starting to finally start to see that. This is again, like you said, what, year 2 of being able to do that? So we'll see.
yeah. It's a right now all we can do is wait and see. Penn State's going to be exciting. It's I don't to me it's a little bit of a barometer. It's not an all and be all of it, but like I said before, you got a lot of the same question marks with both programs heading into the season, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And I think anything I've seen from Penn State, they're saying kind of the right things, but it kind of gets that feeling what Hollis said, like they don't respect anybody outside of Michigan, Ohio State. But I mean,
Yeah.
when you get your butt beat by them every year, maybe. But you're
Yeah.
not traveling to Indiana, you're traveling to Morgantown. So um, I think
Little
that
different.
after last year, they might be coming over a little confident, overconfident a little bit. We'll see how the Mountaineers respond. I think they may have something well for them.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you got your home crowd at your back. You can have that little extra dog in you. You can
I
talk
am
your talk.
concerned that there's going to be a lot more Penn State people there. Would think it's seen a lot of season
Yeah.
ticket holders selling his tickets to knock down the price of their season tickets. So I think that's a bit of a concern right now because Penn State strikes early.
Penn
You're going to
State
hear a
will
lot of Penn
show
State
up
faithful. Yeah, you're going to hear a lot of Penn State
100%.
faithful, and there might be a lot of blue that you don't want to see in the stands. So hopefully, people hold on to their tickets. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's our 50,000-foot view of kind of where things stand the week before game week. And we will be back tomorrow with another episode. It'll be our final one per se before we get into our normal game week routine. Next week, our first walkthrough game day show with Eugene Napoleon will be airing next Thursday morning. Don't have a set time. It'll just be as soon as we can get it up. So early Thursday morning, we'll be breaking down West Virginia and Penn State. But make sure you hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Follow us on X at SI_WVU. For Christopher Hall, I'm Schuyler Callihan. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Between Eers. We'll see you back here tomorrow.